All right, get that posted.
So good.
All right, Joe. Joe, you can get us going, buddy.
Oh no, I think the background noise. One day we really got to get it. I swear, we got to. Welcome. There we go. We'll do this. So welcome everybody to this episode. It's only just beginning. We have with us tonight one of the other creators of UFS Day Tournament. Hey, I got you when he was waiting.
Yeah.
All right.
Hello.
So, Dave, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's sounds like fun. So.
Ryan, we paid Ryan well to get him to tell you that was the case.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, I had been familiar with Jesse, and so when he asked me to do it, it's no problem.
I actually remember talking to you and meeting you at Gen Con 09 when the KOF 2006 Set 4 came out.
Right, yeah.
With 14 Life Leona. No. It was the 8-hand size Leona.
Yeah. Was that part of that was just out of a whole booster set, right?
Yes, yeah. That was when they stopped doing the side-by-side releases.
Okay. Yeah, so I probably worked on that Leona then. I mean, some of my recollections are going to be hazy because like a lot of stuff went by really fast, and it's been a while now. But there are definite like I said, so specific card knowledge is probably I'm down on a little bit right now, unfortunately. So I'll have to apologize about that. But I do remember making that Leona. I don't remember what her ability was, but the goal was basically to make a really high hand size character that was fragile, enough to justify that hand size, right? So. Yeah. So where do you guys want to start then? I mean, I'm here for you. I'm here to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So.
All right. Let's start from the beginning. When did they tell you at Sabretooth they wanted to make a trading card game out like this?
Well, so in 2003 we were in Seattle, and at that point we were we did a lot of. Not only were we working on Warcry and the Horus Heresy card game and the Lord of the Rings tradable miniatures game. Those were kind of our big lines. And we would make games to try them out and to have a good time and to like explore kind of design spaces and things like that. And the the initial game that kind of sparked some of our thoughts that eventually turned into UFS was the thing that Ryan put together. And that was kind of it was like a sword dueling game, and it had the progressive difficulty mechanic in it. That was really Ryan's big part of the game, and that's why we credited him with initial design. And when we moved to Memphis, Tennessee, Ryan left the company, and they asked me to take over development on the Lord of the Rings line. And I also kind of inherited all of Ryan's files. He kind of passed them off to me, and and I had liked that game. It was fun, and even that day a couple times when we played his prototype, his conceptual prototype, we talked about how it'd be cool to do like a fighting game that was kind of reminiscent of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or that kind of thing, where you could bring in like different properties into one thing, have that kind of synergy and bring together lots of different audiences who were all fans of all these different characters. And then, as we were in Memphis and working on things, we started to actually talk to licensors, because at first we were like, Capcom's never going to agree to this. Like Capcom would never want to make a game where they're right next to Soul Calibur characters or that kind of thing. But they, a lot of the licensors turned out to be more open to it than we had originally thought. So we started working on games, and Eric Gapel designed a game. I designed a game. Seth Morgan, who was also there at the time, designed a game, and we started playing around with those to try and figure out conceptually where we wanted to go, and eventually at 1.2 we all packaged up what we had been working on, and we got a hold of outside playtesters who basically all blind tested our games, and then gave feedback to our bosses, and that process kind of decided whose game design we were going to go with. And my design won out there, so I got to keep making the game. I basically took over the lead position on it, and I had added. A lot of Ryan's game had cards that sat out in play, but it wasn't as heavily. He didn't utilize that as heavily as I did, so we got more into if I remember correctly, Ryan's cards were more like assets mostly, whereas I wanted there to be resourcing cards. At the time, a lot of designs were playing around with that, with trying to not have resourcing cards specifically, so that you could avoid kind of like mana screw or that kind of thing. But I figured with drawing so many cards, and I like the idea of having a building up a board position so that you're able to do more and more during the game, right? So that's kind of where those things came from. And then also, there needed to be a mechanic that allowed you to draw cards from all over the card pool and build combinations of cards that could be either obvious because they all hang together theme-wise, or novel because you're able to build kind of go rogue and put together ideas in ways that people may not have seen coming, right? So that's where the resourcing icons mechanic was what I put in there to make it so that you could have, also since we were drawing characters from all over, different properties and different feels and things like that, there needed to be a mechanic that kind of unified things, so that you would kind of put a guy in a category so that he would fight a certain way or draw from certain ideas, and so that way you have kind of like in Soul Calibur, like Siegfried is big and tough, right? And so or not necessarily big, but he's tough. He's a bruiser, and he hits hard. And so Siegfried is actually more like Zangief per se, or any kind of large bruiser character, rather than he is to. He's more related to those characters, regardless of how he looks, than he is to, say, Ryu, right? So
yeah.
So that's where the chain of resourcing symbols came from, and also, if I remember correctly, I brought the commit. We did want to have a way to keep track of what cards were used. So that was turn cards sideways to show that you've used them. Another resourcing mechanic, basically. And in Ryan's game, I think Ryan didn't have that in, as he wanted to make it faster, make it more about just like playing attacks and having kind of like sword play, right? So once we had figured some of those things out, and this process probably took 3 to 6 months, if I remember correctly, because it was also going on while we were making sets for the other games that we all worked on, and dealing with proofing and doing Lord of the Rings, sculpting stuff, and all of the normal stuff to maintain those other lines. And then it kicked into high gear. Like once we had decided we were actually going to go with a certain game, someone's certain game, we felt like that was a strong choice because we'd had outside feedback and internal feedback and an internal process to kind of have a gauntlet, to make the best game we could. Then I moved into making the first sets so that we could go into playtesting. And at the time, we were trying to be a year or two ahead in development, so we would develop not just one set at a time. Like we might even make, with this, we were trying to build ourselves a kind of a buffer of time of being ahead far enough. So we actually designed the first 2 or 3 releases all at once together, and so that took a while. there were because and also the first sets were bigger because they had to establish.
Yeah, that was the first 3 Street Fighter sets, the 2 Soul Calibur sets, and the 1 SNK set. Like that's a lot.
Actually, it was probably the first 2 sets because at the time we hadn't signed the SNK deal yet.
Okay.
But the very first Street Fighter and Soul Calibur sets were also, I think they were double size or they were half as big as.
They were large sets. I remember that.
Yeah, because we had that base set and then expansion set versus it. So, and the original playtest. I mean, in retrospect, original playtesting probably could. It would have been nicer to bring more people into that process so that you could get more and more feedback, so it'd be easier to, be able to recognize problems like Yoga Mastery or things like that, right? But like when you're first making a game, it's hard. You don't really have an audience built, right? So you kind of have to rely on your own judgment and whoever's time that you can get to look at it and tell you and that kind of thing. And so it's hard to put the amount of time necessary in the time period that you have, to actually polish it completely. So that's kind of some of the things we ran into there. But I think we did a pretty good job. I know a lot of people have really enjoyed the game when it first came out, and we did quite well with it. And I was having a blast, so I continued working on it. But while I was at Sabretooth, I think we did 18. There were 9 to 10 releases, and that covered 18 sets of cards and multiple battle boxes and things like that. And I did all of those except for set 4 and some of the promos, but pretty much all of those cards were designed by me. So.
Well, I gotta ask this. Since we talked to Ryan and he said to ask you this. When you were designing the symbol system, and as the sets came out, what were some of the symbols that evolved beyond what you initially designed for them?
Well, I mean, honestly, there was some overlap somewhat between symbols, because there were quite a few symbols, right? I mean, I think, if I remember correctly, like Life because Life kind of mostly just had Life Gain for a while, but it kind of evolved more to have like a lot of, because we made a chart that was kind of like, okay, because it's about theming, right? Like, it's about these symbols basically go along with these types of things, right? Rather than and none of that theme. I mean, like, we tried to avoid, okay, this symbol gets bonus damage because that's not necessarily, like, everybody can benefit from bonus damage, really, right? So, like, we tried to make like fire is the closest to the damage symbol, really. Like, if I remember correctly, it's more like but fire, I tried to stay more in the whole, like, fire is aggressive. It's overly aggressive sometimes, so you should get bonuses for doing things that may put yourself in danger. So not blocking or, spending momentum to deal damage or, discarding cards from your hand to deal damage would all be kind of like fire kind of theme sort of stuff, right? But so I think Life evolved more because it like, I kind of had it overlap more with all as it went along because they ended up kind of being on a lot of the same people and they'd show up a lot of the time. And so, I think Life evolved more in that way because where I'd be like, okay, well, Life could also just be about abundance in general, which sort of all is kind of like inclusion rather than abundance. So like, Life could also draw cards by doing certain things, or like if you're able to gain momentum, you could draw cards. That might be a Life thing, like that kind of thing. And then like there was periods where I just felt like I was kind of like pushing everything into Void. Because Void is,
but sorry, Void is kind of like
water all over the place.
Like we all can agree, Void kind of got the handshake of it was good for a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean the issue there is that Void has denial strategies, right? And if denial strategies are costed correctly, they become dominant. Just period, right?
Yeah.
And so like you have to look at that a lot, and that's what I'm talking about with cost. I think costing wise, there's some things that it just took a, like I said, like if I could go back now with what I know now, I think I could do a much better job. But like you don't get to do that. Like you have to go do the thing, and then things that you didn't know before, right? And I mean, I understood that denial strategies were very dominant, and like we wanted to be able to have denial strategies in the game, but there weren't, like, I tried to avoid hard counters in general, but like you made
a character, you made Cassandra, and Cassandra was pretty much the hard counter character for a long time. And
yes, but like the thinking behind Cassandra ran, which I'm wrong at the end of the day, but the thinking behind the Cassandra character ran that, like, well, everybody draws a lot of cards, right? You're going to draw up all the time. Yep. So you can't really get card advantage in the way you can in other games where you only draw one card at a time, right? So you don't really gain, like, as long as, even if I have a 7 card hand and you have an 8 card hand or whatever, right? Like, if you're just trading a card for me to, with me every time, you're not really gaining advantage, right? But you're gaining tempo is what you're gaining, right? And that was why Cassandra was so powerful. And honestly, if we had made it 2 for 1, I think she would have been fine. Because then it would have been a surmountable problem rather than her being able to control the game in that way, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's little things, right? Like it's just little things add up. So, one of the other things I think that we missed early in UFS is that while you do you do eventually start committing foundations to play cards and things like that, there wasn't really great terminators in the game. Like people could have turns where they played 6, 7 cards and did a bunch of stuff off of their board and all that kind of stuff. And most games build up to, like, that level of play, that level of interaction happens in the very end of the game, right? Whereas UFS starts off at that level basically in turn 2 or 3, right? And there was we did have kind of a conscious effort to kind of, like, because we wanted the game to be fast, we wanted the game to be furious, we did try and, like, push the game into that kind of mid-game play experience that a lot of other games had or have, earlier on in the game, and so that you kind of just ramp straight into it, and it's like you can throw down at that high level early. But it also makes the game very complicated, which makes it hard to tell what exactly works and what exactly doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. Like, I think if we had maybe allowed, you make it a little bit harder to build up a big board early. You make it easier to play attacks basically rather than to play foundations, that kind of thing. And I think that would have helped us a lot from the beginning. But so I think both Life and All actually got a lot more filled out over time. Is Justice the scales, or was it Order? As time went by, Order also picked up a lot of. I tried to split some of the. I started specifically trying to split some of the denial stuff out of Void and into Order, so that it was more of a dichotomy, right? Like, and because Order and Void didn't show up together very much on guys and cards, like, it would happen now and then, but it wasn't as prolific as, like, Void Water or things like that, right? So yeah, I think those are the.
Ironically, my favorite character is Order Void Water.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta also ask, for the longest time, I believe it was toward around the midpoint end of your tenure, evil was practically everywhere.
Oh yeah. Well, evil and good were both. To me, evil and good kind of ended up as being flavor symbols a lot of the time, and a lot of characters from games are not great people, so you basically make them evil, right? Like, what personally too, if I could go back and change things, I would not have put 3 symbols on absolutely every card, right? Like, I would have made characters that had 2 symbols. I would have made a lot more cards that had 1 symbol even, so that you can't, you wouldn't have this ability. You would have less ability to combine absolutely everything together, basically, right? There would have been a little bit more hard, like, okay, well, if you play this card, and also resourcing is about what you can play during a given turn, mostly, right? And so I would have tried to make it harder to combine certain cards together, basically. So that it's like, well, once I play this one symbol card, then I'm only going to be able to play these that symbol for the rest of the turn, and or like if I do just want to focus on playing that one, if I really, really want to play that card all the time, then I may just play one symbol rather than having all these other cards open to me in the pool all the time, right? So sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to ask, is that where the two-symbol Alana came from? Or not Alana?
Elena.
Elena.
Yeah, I think so, but it was way later than, it happened way later in the game, and the card pool already has so many combinations due to the amount of cards that have 3 symbols on them that, there were like a lot of characters had access to huge amounts of the card pool, basically, right? So, which on some levels is good, but I think if we had pulled it back a little bit, we might have been a little bit better off additionally, right? So,
I got a question with symbols. Why did you decide on 12? Why not 8, 6, 20?
Well, we kind of did brainstorming, and those 12 kind of encompass a bunch of different worldview, like there's the Earth, Wind, Fire, Water, right? And then there's Void Spirit. There's 3 sets of 4 kind of concepts that don't totally overlap with each other. And when we started brainstorming more of them, then you start getting more and more concepts that actually kind of overlap, right? And the concepts we did have, there was some overlap, and honestly, I think we would have been better off with 6, because 12 creates a very complicated system. But it covers lots of, since we were looking to do a lot of symbols on each card, it allows you to kind of do flavoring, to do, like I said, give characters access to large amounts of the pool, though you still do have to make decisions about like when you start including more and more cards that have maybe only one symbol in common with the cards that are in your deck, then you may run into situations where you can't just play whatever you want all the time, right? So, when we were talking about it internally a lot, we talked about the ability to represent different flavors, and also to have those mechanical things that I was just talking about, where it does curtail you sometimes, but and it was a way to think about deck building, right? So so that's how we kind of came to 12. Like I said, in retrospect, I think we probably would have been better off boiling it down to 6. But that's what I know now, right? So,
Yeah. I'll ask one of my favorite questions. Is there a card that you can remember that, in hindsight, you wish you never had printed?
Well, I mean, that Cassandra was definitely a problem. There was a period where Zasalamel and Ken were both, there were super powerful decks running around out of both of them. And that was going into the tournament where West played Cassandra and won, right, at Origins. Yeah. We were worried about that Zasalamel and Ken deck, and I had built both of those and was playing them a lot to see. And then we went to that tournament, and Cassandra was basically the hard counter for both of those decks in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Because she's like, nope, you just can't set up, right? And so there was a lot of those things where I'd see things and I'd be like, oh man, is that a problem? And I'd build them and start playing them and that kind of stuff. And then we'd go to some event and somebody would show up with something and that would just wreck whatever I was worried about. And I'd be like, okay, maybe it's not as bad, like Matt's Tira deck. It was wow, no, I hadn't seen that deck at all before that day, right? So that was awesome, right? That kind of thing. And like I said, I think players probably assume that like you make the game, so you're like, well, I know it all. Like I know that. Well, like there's just so many cards. Like I had to make so many cards all at once that exploring that, like even with 6 months of playtesting, it's very hard to explore every possible combination in there.
Mm-hmm.
And like yourself being involved in playtesting, you probably have that same feeling. You're like, so I built these decks in playtesting, and I thought these things during playtesting, and now that the set's out and it's interacting with all these people.
The one I built one deck that the favorite deck I ever built in playtesting was when the Darkstalker's coming out, and I did it under because it was the first set. It was one of the first sets where the split cards started showing up a lot, and I'm like,
yeah,
okay, because set 4 hadn't come out, so we're coming in after set 4 is gone to print. We're on the next one. We're like, so how do these work exactly? We're like and I built a Victor deck, and I'm like, how big can I build a deck that I can mill my opponent while not playing a mill strategy?
Right. Yeah.
And
just playing the game, just letting him go through it.
And so what happened is I literally kept that deck around in my on a piece of paper. The set came out. The week later, there was a AOP event in Canada, and I built this 126 card Victor deck and came in top 8.
Nice.
And they were like, everybody's like, what does this deck do? I'm like, I blow up the board with startovers and infiltrating every turn. You eventually have no plan.
Yeah. Well, like the John Talbane, like we played internally. We played a all Darkstalkers tournament, like around set 5 or 6, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And there was and I played a Talbane deck that just like kind of like it was just really hard to kill, right?
Yeah.
And like that was kind of like eventually the finals was me versus Eric with kind of a mirror match, except I had like meted. Because I thought my deck was so good that I included some things that kind of like would get rid of cards from his deck and like make him put cards in the game file, and that's why I ended up winning that game. But like, so yeah, like, and again, I'm not trying to say like, oh my god, no one knows anything, developers don't know what to talk about, or oh man, all the playtesters have no idea what they're talking about, right? Like, but you get caught up in talking about the most obviously abusive things are just like, oh my god, that is broken, right? So you talk about that, and you fix it, right? And you try and get through everything you possibly can.
And it's sometimes the little cards are the ones that like nobody realizes.
Yeah, and it happened in Magic a lot for a while too, and I think Magic has such a big group of people involved in its development. They also get a very long period of time to bring things to print, right? So that they've gotten, and over that time period, over the 20 years that they've been working on it, they've gotten better at getting through absolutely everything to make sure, right? And we were doing it with a smaller team in a much smaller period of time, so there were more problems, and I tried to deal with them as fast as I could. I mean, looking back, I don't feel like, oh my god, I wish there specific cards turn into problems, but to me, it's more about like I just wish I had known then, about what I know now about games and about cards and about the audience and fun and that kind of stuff, right?
UFS was your first lead, right? Like, I mean, you've taken over other projects over time with Sarah too, but this was the one you were on the lead on, right?
Yeah, and I designed the mechanics, mostly, like other than like I said, the progressive. I mean, the difficulty pool was definitely kind of the center of the game, but like everything around it was pretty much stuff that I did. And so that's the so it was definitely my thing, right? And I when I was a kid, my buddy and I, we'd ride our dirt bikes down to the store and we'd play Street Fighter for like 5 hours. And there was a nickel arcade in the town where I grew up in, and we'd ride over there on a Saturday and we'd like literally play Street Fighter for 8 hours straight, right? So that was we'd spend the whole day there, and so that was kind of like like the whole idea of this game was just something that I really loved, and I'm glad that I'm just I'm overjoyed that the community's still going, that people are still playing. Like I love that you guys are all still just doing it, so.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel proud of that. I feel proud of the game. we opened really big. It was a really good game for us. There was a lot of people playing it, and honestly, there still are quite a few people playing it. So the fact that the game's still going, almost, I mean, we're coming up on 8 years. Like, there could be a 10-year UFS set, right? So that's just.
We're on year 10. We're about to.
Is it year 10? Yeah, you're right. Sorry, no, I was thinking 2008 was actually the last year that I was at Sabertooth. So yeah, I mean, like next year could be the 10th year anniversary. So, you know, I mean, I've tried to help Jasco out, you know, as much as I can, and when they ask for it, like I've tried to pass on whatever Jason needs, you know, that kind of thing, because he's kind of carrying the torch on and all that. So, I think they've done a good job of it, and I think the community has really been behind it. So.
Well, you've always heard the story on how Jason got the game, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of like he pretty much like offered to take it off Fantasy Flight's hands for like nothing, and because he cared about it. I mean, I thought the game was done when I got the email 2 hours as a playtester at Fantasy Flight. I got the email 2 hours before the actual announcement went up. I was like, what's going on with what we're working on? Don't worry about it. We're done. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, when Fantasy Flight, Games Workshop essentially sold all of Sabertooth assets to Fantasy Flight, and I like a lot of people.
They had to take UFS with them. I know they really wanted. They wanted like the Warhammer stuff. It was with their big thing they wanted out of it. They were like, I remember they kind of took it with them.
At the time, my understanding was that they wanted UFS. They did want UFS as part of it. They wanted to continue the game, and I like a lot of the people at Fantasy Flight. I like Fantasy Flight. I'm a fan, and I considered going there, but like at the time, I had. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest near Portland, Oregon. I'm a Seattle guy, like that kind of stuff. And I went out to Memphis as part of the company because it was, I'm working in my, in something that I always wanted to do. And I spent time out there. But at that period, I didn't really want to go to Minnesota. I really wanted to go home and explore some of the opportunities I had with friends and some of my oldest and best friends. And be closer to my family and things like that. And that's why I didn't go to Fantasy Flight. I just that was really the reason, rather than I kind of wished them well with it. And I had been working on UFS for a lot of sets, and I was kind of like, I'm kind of ready to try some other things at this point, right? And I thought they had a good plan for continuing the game. So.
You designed what was the last set you designed, if I remember correctly? Like, where was your cutoff? Was it at Warrior's Dream Street Fighter? Do you remember by any chance?
Was Warrior's Dream the first Fantasy Flight set?
Yeah, it was the first one they released. They put out because that was the set that I remember they had to pull it because it had Sabertooth's name on it, and they had to pull it to put Fantasy Flight's name on it. There was something about
I didn't know that.
What?
I worked pretty closely with them on, like, I turned in a bunch of ideas for cards for those sets. My understanding was that they didn't necessarily want to use all of them, and I think James reworked a bunch of that stuff into other things that they wanted to do, and that was fine. Whatever they wanted to do with it. And so I contributed to those sets, but they weren't me in the lead like I had been in the past.
Yeah, that's where James. Yeah, that was about the transition point where James was taking over on design.
Yeah, I didn't like I said, I did up through everything that was at Sabertooth. I did all of that except for set 4, if I remember correctly. And then, but like you're a team, like Seth and Eric were there all the time, talking with me about things and having ideas and bouncing. We bounced stuff off each other a lot, right? And then, like I said, when it went to Fantasy Flight, that's basically my cutoff right there. And so, and Tom Kohler is at Jasco now. He was with us at Sabertooth, so he was there during that whole period too. And he played a lot and has been involved in the game since that whole time period. So I've known Tom for a long time. Tom was from Portland, and so Tom and I would play card games against each other in Portland all the time before we ever joined any of these companies and stuff. But So yeah, like I said, I'm definitely proud of the game. Like it's something that I'm glad to have been involved in, and you know, like I hope I wish everybody luck with it too. Right? So if the 10th anniversary, I mean, hopefully something can be, you know, do cool stuff for the 10th anniversary.
Oh yeah, like we got. I mean, this year
We've got some things happening.
Yeah.
like we've got the Mortal Kombat's gonna hopefully be out next year. Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, which is awesome. Yeah.
I mean, finally getting to see Mortal Kombat in UFS is like a thing. That's a
Yeah, no. Well, originally we had, you know, our target was Street Fighter Mortal Kombat. Like that's what we wanted the game to be. Like right off the bat, we were like, okay, you know, we want to get Mortal Kombat, we want to get Street Fighter. You know, we want to do a whole set where all the C's are K's for Mortal Kombat, like that kind of thing. And like, but you know, there was a game from
Score.
Blockbuster, yeah,
Score game, yeah.
Teamed up and we had pitched Mortal Kombat, and like I'd actually like done, you know, I had done like conceptual overview stuff through like phone calls and like video chat with people from Midway or whoever owned Mortal Kombat at the time.
It was Midway at that point.
Yeah, and so we had pitched them, and then you know we heard about this thing from Score and Blockbuster, and we were like, okay, you know, and they were like, well, we're going to go with them, and we were like, well, did they like? And we had basically already closed the Street Fighter license, and like we had signed contracts with Capcom, and so we were like, well, so Street Fighter's going to be in this game, like what's going on there? So we got a hold of Capcom, and Capcom told us, well, you know, yeah, no, we signed the contract with them, but they can only sell it through the Blockbuster stores. They can't sell it to hobby stores or anywhere else. And we were like, oh, okay, I guess that. But Mortal Kombat decided to sign with them exclusively rather than signing a deal with us as well, or us instead. And you know, and I mean, we had been talking to Soul Calibur as well. Just because it was a big property, and you know, I was a fan, a lot of people internally were fans, and so, you know, and again, the plan was eventually we wanted to do more and more things, so we were looking at a Soul Calibur set for like set 3 or set 4, like where SNK came in, kind of, right?
Yeah.
But you know, since we couldn't get Mortal Kombat, we just moved Soul Calibur straight up and just ran with that, because we felt like, I mean, Mortal Kombat's probably a bigger property overall due to its longevity, and some of, like, you know, Mortal Kombat 2 is a huge game in the video games, right? But at the time, Soul Calibur was definitely, if it had a bigger game, like I think Soul Calibur 2 or 3 was out, and that was definitely a bigger game than any of the Mortal Kombat games at that time, anyways, right? You know, so I think Soul Calibur ended up being great for us, and you know, I know a lot of people who got involved in the game got involved because of Soul Calibur as well.
Yeah, I know I got into Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
So I got in under, I think my first deck was I bought a Voldo starter, and then somebody gave me an Ultimate Voldo. That was my first deck.
You're like, yeah,
I'll do this. And then I found Cassandra and Dulcim, and it was like, all right, I'm just playing Void until or die.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I like Mitsurugi, I like hockey, I like Voldo sometimes. Like, I love Nightmare, you know. And like, I was always like, I love Blanca. I used to play Blanca all the time as a kid, as Ryu, and you know, those characters. And so like in testing, a lot of time internally, people would be like, a lot of people would like look at those characters that they know that I love, and they'd be like, hey, you know, this guy seems a little good, buddy, like that kind of thing. And I'd be like, come on, I'm trying to make everybody awesome, right? Like that kind of thing. But I think, you know, there'd be a lot more attention paid sometimes to the characters that people knew that I was really big fans of sometimes. And yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, there was a point where we were actually talking to Lucasfilm about doing a Star Wars set of UFS, and I think like that's an opportunity that I wish we could, like, I think that would have been awesome. Also, we were talking about doing like Halo UFS stuff, because and partly too that was, you know, we knew Soul Calibur 4 was coming out and that it was going to have characters in it from these things, you know, like have the Spartans from Halo and have Yoda and Darth Vader in it and things like that. And we were just like, wow, that would be so cool, you know, to get those things in there. I was also actually a big Darkstalkers fan as a kid, and so, you know, like all those characters coming in, like I also loved what's the vampire's name? I was really into Dimitri.
Dimitri.
Yeah, I like Dimitri. Playstyle in the video game though, like Felicia, I liked a lot, and so, you know, I like the art from Darkstalkers a lot, and so yeah, it was just, I mean, I had like I said. What are some other things that you guys wonder about? Like, I've just been kind of rambling here. So,
No, that's fine. We like hearing this.
Yeah.
Like, you're hitting on a bunch of things I was going to ask anyways. You just got on and said it, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean.
I will say this. What was your favorite character you got to design? What's the one that was like you were most proud of that you designed and you were like, I like the character, good or bad, it had a part of it.
That first Ken, you know, I really was proud of that first Ken, and even though, you know, I thought it was really flavorful for him, and it was very playable, you know, maybe even too playable. And the art was freaking rad, and you know, the foil version of it I really loved. So that was just that was kind of one of my ones where I was just like, yeah, I feel like everything came together pretty well there. So like a lot of I feel more proud of a lot of that first Darkstalkers set mechanically, because I feel like I had, you know, learned a lot and been able to make, you know, interesting guys that weren't super ridiculous. The Ibuki character that had all the cards, you know, she had a couple cards that were pretty much broken.
Yeah,
a lot
she
of
had
that,
Shinobi Tradition, Kazumi Zaki.
Yeah.
Like literally, I think she was the character in that set. Her character block, like a lot of it got banned over time. It just was like, it was a little too good all around, and like,
well,
I was actually, I remember in playtesting, I thought her ultra rare attack, I thought it was garbage. I'm like, this will.
It's terrible.
Because the game was so slow in mid range. I'm like, I kept testing. We tested it once, and we're like, all right, Shinobi Tradition is pretty cool. And then we got to this card, and I'm like, I just didn't think about it. I'm like, oh, you have to play her to do it. I'm like, oh, she's really good. We didn't think about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the character cards were probably, like, that whole block of cards was like a theme suggestion from my roommate, he was actually kind of like the CFO of our company. He was in charge of all the money and stuff, but you know, I lived with him and he was way into, you know, he'd play all the games with us and stuff. So he kind of suggested that theme where like clearing stuff out, because she's this fast, you know, like ninja, shifty girl, and like, I think the character cards weren't actually terrible, but it's mostly Shinobi Tradition that allowed you to just go off, you know, like that.
Yeah, Shinobi Tradition, and then there was Higher Caliber to react with her ability. Like, there was just, she was like, if you look at, she was one of those ones where when you put her with the part pool that was available, it was just like, okay, here is this deck.
Yeah.
I remember Worlds that year, I played the Worlds that year, the first, when she was legal, I played against it, and I'm like, I can't, this is the scariest thing I've ever dealt with. It was just, I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a fun deck to play yourself. And when it did go off, it would kill you fairly quickly, at least. But, you know, it didn't spend, 10 to 15 minutes trying to end the game, right? Like, or 20, 30 minutes decking or something like that. But yeah, I mean, some of those cards were like that's the Terminator thing that I'm talking about. Like, those cards totally broke two Terminators at once, right? Because you'd be drawing cards and clearing stuff out of your pool, like, at the same time, right? So it's just this engine that just like, it's like, now I do a million things. Like, what are you gonna do, right? So,
I mean, I liked a lot of her cards too, because it made the there was that starter deck Ukyo from set 3 that allowed you to do multiples of multiples, and like she actually because the action allowed you to go into the infinite loop. I read Matt Coles told me about it, and I'm like, I gotta build this, and I was like hyped to bring it to Canadian Nationals, and then a month before it, they're like, oh, we're stopping this. Both of themselves. I'm like,
damn it. Yeah.
So I always wanted to, I always had this idea of every time we want to go to a big event, we want to play something crazy and like off format. And I did it for a long time, and then there was one deck I built that was pretty much play it was in second set Darkstalkers, Dark Force Barrage Body, the J Talbane attack, and there was the Turn It Up action, and then you just play all your just out foundation your opponent, and then you just kill them in 2 giant moves. And it was so straightforward, and I'm like, nobody was too about it. It was kind of like a little bit here and there deck. And we played it at 1 PTC. It was great.
I mean, we made a lot of foundations that had abilities that should have been on assets, right? You know.
Yeah.
We made a lot of foundations that like not only were they a resourcing card that checked really high, but they also had an action ability, and some of those abilities even did things like foundations should, in my view at this point, foundations should basically, modify attacks in small ways, or do things that are dependent on other things happening in the game or other types of cards being played, so that way they don't you can't just play a bunch of foundations and have those foundations do things that change the game state a lot, right?
And I'll say now probably that's where design is. It's foundations have kind of come down a notch heavily, and it's they're very much they're there to modify the game on an offensive or defensive, but they don't rule the game.
Yeah. And also I think we should have been really cognizant of how many 5s and 6s checks existed in the game, and we should have made it so characters couldn't be checked for 6, right? That they were a 4 or something, right? Because that's what added a lot of 6s to being able to play a bunch of character cards if you wanted to just have awesome blocks and check really high was one of the ways that you could build that deck that checks really high all the time, right? So. And honestly, there could have been a lot more 4-check attacks, I think, too. That would have favored offense a lot more, but
there was one actually printed attack. It was a Rose attack that had a 4-check, but all the rest of them were the foundation splits. They kind of you could play the gray deck with attacks. It was not bad. I mean, I played it for a while. You're just what are you doing? I'm like, well, I have one actual attack, and the rest of them are foundations with attacks. Deal.
Yeah. Well, and then actions could be I think on action we put a lot of abilities on actions that also should have been on assets, and we put abilities on assets that should have been on actions a lot as well. In that, you don't want abilities on assets that are something that you're just going to use a million times in a turn, right? If an asset is something that you play and it has an enhance that you're basically just going to play on every single attack you ever play, that enhance should probably be an action, right? Because that way there's once you have the asset out, there's no choice. It's just literally just I do this every single time. That's the whole point of this, right? So, but the thing that the action that doubled the damage of an attack, I actually thought that was a great card because it there was a period where attacking was actually quite good, and that was part of it, and you could actually
the Absurd Strength action.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
That was the most. I will say this about Absurd Strength, and I will stick to this. It was the most balanced broken card for a long time. I didn't mind it. I thought Absurd Strength was, everybody was complaining about it, more for its second ability to discard momentum than anything else. I'm but the E to just plus X damage does this. That was perfectly fine.
I was okay with my Jubei deck. I played Moonbeam Slicer, made the E+6, and then said Absurd Strength. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, I liked Absurd Strength because it. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
The reason why I think Absurd Strength is too good is you focus on making one tack guaranteed to hit, and then you essentially get to add more or less the equivalent of a 6 difficulty move for 1 difficulty.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was too good.
Yeah, it was definitely really, really powerful, probably overpowered. But I liked it because it encouraged beatdown, right? And people were like, oh, they're killing me on turn 2 or 3, and I'm like, well, it's supposed to be a really fast game, like it's a fighting game, right? So, but
there's a newer, actually, there was a champ card action in the newer sets that we actually mimicked that card in a way. It was a firstie, so they could only be the first one they play, but it was plus 6 damage to either hand size minus 3. Yeah.
Okay.
It was pretty good.
It punishes large hand size guys opposing you, right? So that's not bad. We struggled a lot with hand size versus ability and things like that too. Unfortunately, there was a lot of the low hand size guys could have had way better abilities. I think would have been, much more playable at that point. Yeah.
I can definitely say I turned into cheats. I turned into reports sometimes, and I'd be like, okay, this character needs either more life, a plus 1 card hand. Like my reports were very straightforward. It's like keep the ability, change these numbers, like the kind of going, and then the next kid would come out, the next batch would come out, and they'd be like, no change to Hand of Vitality, completely different ability. And I'm like, no, it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think a lot of the time that would happen not because I was like, I want to keep these numbers, but that would happen because I was like, okay, I had more ideas about how this character's ability, how I wanted to interact with its card block that goes along with it, right? That's another thing I liked a lot about UFS, how characters had all these cards that went with them, and so you had this chance to make cool themes for them to do with their things, right? Super attacks were also some I think we missed a lot of opportunities on super attacks to make those way more compelling cards. But there was
once in a while you had a good one. Once in a while there was a great. This character's ultra rare attack. It's meant to be the ultra rare attack, and then sometimes the rare one of their rare attacks is the better of the bunch, and it happens.
Yeah. Well, a lot of time, the ultra rare, because our philosophy about rarity was such that utility cards, cards that you want to play 4 of, cards that you want to have all the time, cards that do generally useful things. We wanted to be more in the uncommon common slot, and we wanted ultra rares and rares to be more like, this is really good in a certain situation. It's super powerful if you set things up for it, like that kind of thing. That was the overall philosophy of rarity there. And characters were basically just rare because they had awesome art and they're character cards, right? And so they would have a rare and an ultra rare set, right? But that's part of the reason why I think super attacks ended up being the way they were, because because of that philosophy, you never really take the route of okay, this ultra rare is just going to be awesome numbers wise, right? It's supposed to have some weird thing it does, right? So just making a super efficient big attack is not what kind of the mandate was, right? I love it.
All right. Dave, we're getting close to our 1 hour time frame. We got to do some quick announcements on our end. Obviously, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing a lot of your insights. Just a quick one. What are you currently working on? What's your? If you plug their new show, plug their new stuff.
I'm a partner and a producer at Ninja Division. And we're a publisher, and we have internal design The last project I designed was called Ninja All Stars. It's a board game where each player builds a team of ninjas, and then you can take on your friends' teams of ninjas and challenges like capture the flag or like brawl or King of the Hill and that kind of thing. And you can play it. Yeah, you can play it in a league setting where your guys you can have a team that's persistent from game to game, will gain experience and get better and gain new abilities and stuff like that. So if you want to check out ninjadivision.com, that should have pictures of all the figures and stuff that are going to be for that. I'm also working on a new board game that probably should be on Kickstarter in the beginning of next year, but that'll be from Ninja Division. I can't really tell you what it's called yet because we're still there. But also, another Ninja Division also does a game called Super Dungeon Explorer, and we're ramping up to more Super Dungeon Explorer stuff in the end of this year. So if you guys keep an eye out for that, that'd be awesome. Trying to think about what other projects. I'm also doing work on a Ninja Division game called Relic Knights, which is a miniatures war game. So if you guys are interested in miniatures, you should check out the Relic Knights figures for sure.
Yeah, that I actually have heard of. I think a friend of mine is one of the models for Relic Knights.
Okay. One of the she's a cosplayer or a.
I think you actually did several models from her too.
Okay. Who's that, Joe? Or?
Marie Claude Bonet.
Yeah, Marie Claude. She's come out to she comes out to Gen Con most years with us. She's done a lot of different costumes. This year she did a statue. It's like a 13-foot tall statue of one of the characters from Relic Knights, and brought that out to show. It's like a big robot, and
yeah. I took a picture with her in front of that thing. That thing was massive.
Yep, and so the character she dressed up as is called Betty, and the robot's named Glug, and they're like a team. She's like a mechanic, and he's like the wrecker bot that helps her. And so she dressed up as Betty, and then Glug is this giant statue that's with her, which is really cool. But yeah, no, Marie's great. Marie makes all her own costumes, does all her own design, and so if you want to check her out, she's on Facebook as well. So yeah, so that's some of the new stuff I'm working on. We're also looking at publishing third-party games, so there's going to be a lot of things from Ninja Division if you guys are into that kind of stuff.
What announcements do we got? We got.
You want me to go through them? Because I got to memorize doing them twice a week now.
Do you remember that we got? I don't know why that needed. Dave, for some weird reason, I have no.
Did Dave mute because of the noise, maybe? Yeah. Okay. So let's run through our stuff.
I'm trying to unmute Dave. I don't know why that happened.
He muted himself, so that way we could do it.
Oh,
so
okay.
Mute mode,
Okay. I thought I done pressed something on my keyboard. With Google Plus changing all the time, it's possible. Matt, go ahead and go through the list. The only announcement I got is of another UFS show that came out.
Yep. At the end of this month, there is in Warren, Michigan, the Michigan PTC, being hosted by Slam at, I don't remember the name of the place. I don't remember.
It's a new place, so I can't remember it either, because it's not the same place it's been the last few years.
Is it Eternal Games?
I think it is. Eternal Games. That's it.
And so that'll be the end of this month. And then in October, we have the Poughkeepsie PTC, which will be a champion card collector. It's also the start of the Empire Circuit. I'll be there. Jesse will be there. Tim Keefe will be there.
Yep.
And then after that, I believe it's the week right after that, is the Rochester 2K.
Nope, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
The week after the PTC is UK Nationals.
UK Nationals. Is there that? There's also the Winnipeg PTC.
There's Winnipeg PTC that weekend as well, I think.
Yeah. So if you want to go up into the cold, or go to the UK.
Those events are going on. Then after that, is the Rochester 2K, the first independent major spectacular tournament for UFS in a long time. We definitely want to see people out for that.
There's free beer, and it was also just announced last night, we're gonna have our own exclusive special playmat.
Yep.
That's
I
gonna be
lobbied
awesome.
for Sean. I lobbied for Sean's character card art that's in development. He denied me on that.
It's gonna be really special, and it'll be a surprise when we get there.
Yep.
And then there's the Nashville PTC, I believe.
December.
In December.
December 12th.
Yep. I have my guys grinding away in the card fighting arena. That is life because they are being made. Well, Joey knows, but nobody else quite understands that big fish in small pond is about to befall them very quickly, or little fish big pond is going to befall them very quickly. I know from personal experience. Joey knows from personal experience. William, Isaac, Trey, Fuller. Gosh, who else we got? Ricky or Nikki. I always do that. I don't know why. Well, no, John knows. The store owner knows. They're about to see what it's really like in a fully competitive mode with players that have been playing a long time. God help these guys. Then what do we got? What else we got? We have.
So guys, can I
Yep.
sign off, or would you like me to stick around? Or?
You're more than able to.
Go ahead.
You run away madly tonight if you want.
Yep.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Nice meeting you,
Yeah,
Dave.
no, I mean, yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna go eat dinner now. So
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Go
Go
ahead.
Go on ahead.
yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
I wish you luck with all your events, and you guys keep having fun, man. So
Thank you.
all right, bye bye.
Bye. Ed.
Yeah.
And then the last announcement is Huntington. The UFS group in Huntington is starting to do their own UFS shows. They are on episode 2. Let me see where they got it. Think Cadwell. Is it Cadwell? What's his name? He's over in Huntington. Give me a second, guys. We do this live because I am really lazy. Yeah. It is. Go look up on YouTube. I gotta find their YouTube page. It's always so fun. No, it's just flat out Huntington UFS. So head on over to YouTube, which you're hopefully watching us on, which you should be liking this video. Leave us your positive and negative comments. Just guys, if you're gonna leave negative, please keep it family friendly. I will delete anything with unnecessary expletives, but we do appreciate the feedback, positive or negative. Like us and subscribe to us, and then head on over to Huntington UFS, where they are doing match videos. And they have 2 videos up. Looks like Skull Barriers versus Evil, and something just called UFS Belts.
It's Void Roy versus Air Lord Raptor.
So
I actually pulled it up while we were talking.
So
Some by K. William Caldwell.
Yep. So go look up those guys, like and subscribe them too. Leave only positive comments for them. We've been around a while. We can handle negative comments. I'm fragile, but I can handle it.
You can.
And then we have no clue what's going to happen next week, so do we know what's going on next week?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. I'll figure something out. I've been kind of running content management the last few weeks, and I will figure something out for next week to talk about. We might do another Build-A-Deck. We might do maybe our top 10 best characters of UFS ever. That could be a little fun discussion, but I think we were going to hold that over until the winter quiet down.
But I don't want to look at another 344 characters again.
It's all right. We'll figure something fun out to talk about. Make sure we always have a show and content to go through. Just how it is.
I've got a couple ideas. We gotta wait for some time for them to happen.
Okay.
I've got some special plans.
Okay.
All right.
So we will see everybody next week. Same time channel. We'll see everybody later.
Night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Bye.